this guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
Oral questions. Questions orales.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
This weekend in Cloverdale, 15,000 people lined up in the pouring rain for the hopes that they might get a few rejected potatoes. It was Ugly Potato Day in that city. And 15,000 British Columbians are too hungry and desperate that they needed to go and collect those rejected foodstuffs. 2 million Canadians are lined up at food banks. There are 1,400 homeless encampments in Ontario today. And what is the Prime Minister doing? Working to save his political skin from his revolting caucus. This can't go on. Will he call a carbon tax election now?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I would really hope that every single MP in this House would agree that in our great country, no one should ever go hungry. But when Conservatives talk about the most vulnerable, they are crying crocodile tears. And how do I know that, Mr. Speaker? I know that because they have had the gall to vote against a national school food program, a program that will feed 400,000 Canadian kids. How can they look themselves in the face when they oppose feeding Canadian kids?
Yes, that's right.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
That program, though it has costed millions, has not fed a single hungry child. It has fed bureaucracy, which is all it ever was intended to do. Meanwhile, 2 million people are lined up at food banks. We've got 15,000 people that will line up for a, quote, ugly potato because they can't afford to eat. We have diseases like scurvy that are back. And 1 in 4 kids go to school hungry after 9 years of this Prime Minister, yet his priority is saving his political career from his revolting caucus. This cannot go on. Will he call a carbon tax election today?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are damning themselves with their own words. I was at a school in downtown Winnipeg on Friday. I was there with Premier Wab Kinew, and we gave those beautiful, wonderful children some bannock, a little carton of milk, some jam, some butter, and a banana. That was not bureaucracy that fed those kids. That was the deal we've done with Manitoba. The Conservatives are against feeding kids.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Are you kidding me? She says that the Canadians should be happy that while 1 in 4 kids go to school hungry, while 2 million people line up at food banks, while scurvy is making a comeback after 9 years of this government, Canadians should be grateful that she showed up with a few snacks and a photo op at one school. Mr. Speaker, this is the same finance minister who has just blown back $7 billion past her deficit target, meaning more inflation and higher rates. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister hides in the fetal position under his desk. Will he call a carbon tax election now?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we have clearly knocked the Leader of the Opposition off his game this week. Because how can he have the temerity to talk about actual meals fed to actual children as bureaucracy? That tells you how cynical and how low these Canadians go. And then he talks about inflation. Mr. Speaker, it's been in the Bank of Canada's target range for 9 months in a row. It fell below 2% in September, and rates have come down 3 times. That's what's happening with inflation, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Burnaby South.
Mr. Speaker, country first, party second. According to the RCMP, the Indian government hired thugs to terrorize Canadians. The Conservatives are laughing about this, but people have died as a result, and they've meddled in our politics. The Prime Minister has said that there are multiple Conservative MPs and or candidates compromised. They may be sitting in the chamber right now, but the Conservative leader chooses ignorance. Has the Prime Minister directly urged the leader of the Conservatives to get his security clearance?
The Honourable Minister for Public Security.
Mr. Speaker, we thank our honourable colleague for the question. We've been clear. We think all party leaders in this House should have the required security clearance so they can receive information concerning the threats to this House or the threats to Canada involving foreign interference. We also take the comments of Leader of the NDP very seriously with respect to protecting Sikh Canadians and protecting those who've been victims of this foreign interference by the Government of India. My responsibility as Public Safety Minister is to ensure the safety of all Canadians, and that's exactly what we're going to continue to do.
The Honourable Member from Thornhill.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, it seems that no part of Canadian life is safe from the Finance Minister's radical tax rampage. Not food, not home, not gas, and not even music. In response to new streaming taxes from this government, Spotify just announced that they're raising subscription fees by 15%. Even the simple things like kicking back and listening to your playlist isn't immune from this greedy government. When will the Finance Minister wake up, face the music, and finally admit that her new taxes and spending are not worth the cost?
The Honourable Minister for Heritage.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives once again are making the talking points of platforms that are making millions in Canada, and they have done so for years. Like all Canadian companies, they contribute to our system, but this is not the first time that they've raised their subscriber prices. This time, when it comes to helping our Canadian artists, the Conservatives speak out against it. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm not really surprised, once again, that they're in the pockets of these digital giants.
The Honourable Member from Thornhill.
Their hands are in the pockets of average Canadians. The Finance Minister told Canadians to cut Disney Plus, and she's probably going to tell them to cut their Spotify subscriptions too. They say that taxes will fix climate change in the economy. They say that paying more taxes is going to lead Canadians to be better off, and all while they talk down to people. The carbon tax is up. The streaming tax is up. Capital gains taxes are up. And the Finance Minister, missed her target by 17%. When will she admit that she has failed, axe the taxes, and let Canadians live their lives without their hands in Canadians' pockets?
The Honourable Minister. Order. The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and Energy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We on this side of the House actually have a plan for a prosperous economic future for this country. The Conservatives, who continue to deny the existence of climate change, have a plan that leads backwards, not forwards. We are ensuring that things like the $12 billion Dow plant in Alberta is getting built, the $7 billion Jansen potash mine, electric vehicle and battery plants, hydrogen facilities in Nova Scotia and Newfoundland and Labrador. We have a plan for a future that is a great and prosperous future. They have no plan.
Our government has said that Canada will stand with the Ukrainian people until they win. Ukraine must win because their victory is essential to Canada's security. There is a coordinated Russian campaign to spread disinformation, sow distrust, and encourage isolationism. Could the Minister of International Trade please share with us how Russian foreign interference is a threat to our support of Ukraine and to all Canadians?
The Honourable Minister for International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member for Etobicoke Centre for his steadfast support for Ukraine. The Conservative leader's dismissal of Ukraine as a faraway land is shameful.
Shame.
Their willingness to appease far-right disinformation, often fueled by foreign actors like Russia, undermines democracy and the Canadian values. Canadians deserve leadership that stands firmly against these dangerous influences. While Conservatives abandon Ukraine, on this side of the House, we will keep supporting Ukraine until they win this war. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Again, I'm going to remind all members, please, to not take the floor when they are not recognized by the chair so that the chair can listen and all members can hear the questions and the answers. The honourable member from Haldimand, Norfolk.
After 9 years of the NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and now time is up. At a time when Canadians are skipping meals and many are living paycheck to paycheck, the Liberals have siphoned $400 million of taxpayer money to contracts for their friends at the Green Slush Fund. The Liberal-appointed board has racked up at least 186 conflict of interest. When will this government end the cover-up so that this House can get back to helping Canadians deal with the cost of living crisis that they create?
The Honourable Minister of Innovation.
Disappointing, Mr. Speaker. After 9 years, the same slogan, Mr. Speaker, the same type of disinformation, the same time of false accusation. Mr. Speaker, it's time to get real. The Conservatives know very well that we acted timely to dissolve that organization, Mr. Speaker. The board has resigned, the CEO has resigned, and the organization no longer exists. We made a solemn promise to Canadians was to go to the bottom of this. That's what we did, Mr. Speaker, and they should let this House do the important work is to work for Canadians instead of filibustering their own motion, Mr. Speaker. It's shameful what they're doing.
Order. The honourable member from Haldimand, Norfolk.
Mr. Speaker, what is shameful is cover-up. This Liberal government is still in contempt of Parliament by refusing to turn over the documents that could certainly reveal the depths of their corruption at the Green Slush Fund. So now they have paralyzed Parliament in order to hide their scandal. Meanwhile, Canadians are suffering through unprecedented food, crime, and housing crisis that they created. Will they finally turn over the documents today and give Canadians the answers that they deserve?
That's right. Let's go. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What my honourable colleague is saying is false. The government has handed over thousands of documents, just done so in a way that protects the charter rights of Canadians. What is true, Mr. Speaker, is that the Conservatives are filibustering their own motion because they don't want to respect your ruling, which asked that this unprecedented motion would go to committee. Mr. Speaker, I think there's only one thing the Conservatives are afraid of. They don't want this House to get to work because they know that if there's another confidence motion, the Conservative leader will lose it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
There you go. Here.
The honourable member from Barrie Innisfil.
Well, after 9 years of this NDP Liberal coalition, taxes, costs, and crime are all up, and now their time is up. After Liberal-appointed board members of SDTC were caught funneling $400 million tax dollars to 186 of their companies, why won't the NDP Liberals end the cover-up today by releasing the documents as Parliament ordered and that you agreed with, Mr. Speaker, so that there can be accountability for the obvious corruption and potential crimes that have taken place under this costly coalition?
Hear, 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 hear. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The truth is, your ruling was to send this matter to committee for further study because it was unprecedented what the Conservatives were asking for. Mr. Speaker, we agree with your ruling. It is only the Conservatives who are obstructing their own obstruction because they don't want the truth to come out, which is that they are trying to abuse the extraordinary privileges they have to override the rights of Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Barrie Innisfil.
Well, the truth is that there is more proof there that these Liberals are not worth the cost, the crime, and the corruption. Here are the facts. 186 conflicts of interest took place. 400 million tax dollars were funneled to the companies of Liberal-appointed board members. You, Mr. Speaker, ruled that the evidence needs to be handed over unredacted as Parliament has demanded. Why are the NDP Liberals not releasing the documents? What and who are they covering up for?
Hear, 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 hear. The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
It's typical of the Conservatives to omit the facts that are inconvenient to them, because the fact of the matter is that we have provided thousands of pages of documents already, that we are respecting your ruling, which is to send this matter to committee for further study, because I think, as all Canadians would appreciate and expect, they expect that police follow due process. They expect that parliamentarians support their rights. They would expect that parliamentarians don't try to abuse their extraordinary powers to go after their own partisan vendettas and attack Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Good answer.
Member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
In another conflict of interest involving this Liberal government's de facto finance minister, we found out that he's been caught using his access to lobby governments to benefit himself and his company. It's carbon tax Carney's heat pump hustle. And he's claiming it's green policy, but his only policy is to line his pockets with green. And this Prime Minister is shielding him from Canada's conflict of interest laws and lobbying regulations after 9 years of these NDP Liberals. Taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up. Will they just have carbon tax Carney testify at committee?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, the Conservatives, when they have Canadians that oppose their policies, all they know how to do is attack them. Instead of respecting people and their differences of opinions, they go after them personally. Mr. Speaker, that's not how leaders in this country should act. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Well, I can assure the member opposite that Canadians take it personally, that every time that they're given the opportunity, they don't help out Canadians, but instead help out well-connected Liberal insiders like Mark Carney with his heat pump hustle, carbon tax Carney, conflict of interest Carney. It's stacking up in such a way that we can't even keep track of all the scandals involving the de facto finance minister when the Prime Minister lost confidence in the finance minister. So now Canadians want answers about the access that carbon tax Carney has been given and all the Canadian tax dollars that he's lining his pockets with. Will they just instruct the de facto finance minister to testify at committee?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, again, there they go attacking private citizens, and it just goes to show anytime a Canadian citizen speaks up against them, what do? They go on the personal attack. But, Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Conservatives and the Conservative leader. Why won't he get his security clearance, Mr. Speaker? It's a question Canadians across this country are asking because they want to know what and who is he trying to protect. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Bay of Quinte.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of this government, we have taxes up, we have costs up, time's up, and credit card fees are up. And this government announced that they lowered credit fees, but this announcement flopped like a soggy pancake. Stripe, where Liberal leadership candidate Mark Carney sits on the board, said savings won't be passed on to consumers because of other rising costs. Wow, even Liberal insiders tied to oligopolies know that this government's announcements fall flat. What will these governments learn? It's not Carney Canadians need, it's competition, and a Prime Minister who will flip real results for Canadians and their families.
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, the question on Canadians' minds this week is why will the Leader of the Opposition not get his security clearance?
That's right.
Mr. Speaker,
That's a good question.
every Canadian is wondering, what is it that he is trying to hide, or what is it that he is trying to protect? It's an easy thing to do. All the other leaders in this place have done it. Why won't the Leader of the Opposition get his security clearance?
Good.